Добрий день і вітаю всіх, хто приєднався до нас. З вами Ольга Атаманова і я рада вітати вас у медіа-центрі України сьогодні. 946-й день від початку повномасштабного вторгнення російського агресора на нашу землю, 11-й рік триває війна, і сьогодні ми будемо говорити про деякі аспекти нашої енергетичної незалежності від країни-агресорки, а саме будемо говорити про азербайджанський газ через Україну. Транзит його. Тож, як уникнути енергетичної залежності від країни-агресорки. Більш детально поговоримо сьогодні на цю тему з нашими спікерами і спікерками. Тож хочу представити наших гостей. Це Викторія Voitsitska, народна депутатка України 8-го скликання, директорка з адвокації в енергетичному секторі ГО Міжнародний центр перемоги України. З нами сьогодні Ганна Hopko, голова правління мережі захисту національних інтересів АНС, співзасновниця Міжнародного центру української перемоги. Чекаємо з хвилини на хвилину Іллю Нескhodovskого, керівника аналітичного напряму мережі АНС, а також з нами на включенні онлайн сьогодні Серhii Makohon, генеральний директор ТОВ «Оператор ГТС Україна» 19-22 років. Вітаю вас і дякую, що приєднались сьогодні до нас. Тож ми чуємо зараз, вже багато є обговорені публікації, в тому числі у медіа, про те, що у Європі, в Європейському Союзі мають бажання, є такі висловлення щодо заміни транзиту газу РФ азербайджанським. Але поки як розвивається ситуація, наскільки тут наші побоювання є дійсними, я хочу надати слово пане Сергію вам, тож сподіваюся, ви нас чуєте, бачите. Прошу.
Так, чую, бачу. Дякую за можливість поговорити на цю тему. Так, згоден з вами, що це дуже важлива тема, але потрібно нам розібратися, що наразі нам пропонують. Ну, по-перше, я хотів би сказати, що я не чув ніде в офіційних якихось там матеріалах те, що Європа хоче, щоб ми транзитували азербайджанський газ. Так, Європа зацікавлена отримувати азербайджанський газ, вона вже його отримує. Наразі до Європи експортується близько 13 мільярдів кубічних метрів реально азербайджанського газу, який видобувається в Азербайджані, але він поступає не через територію Російської Федерації, не через територію України, а поступає через спеціально для цього побудований газогін ТАНАП через Туреччину. Тобто вже наразі цей газогін працює і 13 мільярдів Азербайджан постачає, і він поступово збільшує свої обсяги. І планується наразі, що до 30-го року вони збільшать обсяги постачання свого реально видобутку.
Yes, Europe is interested in this gas. However, if we are talking today about the idea to launch Azerbaijan gas through this tube, let's think whether this is really going to be the gas belonging to Azerbaijan. First of all, I would like to say, as you said correctly, it's the third year of war. However, Ukraine is still transiting to European countries both oil and gas from the Russian Federation, and Russia earns almost $11 billion annually for this, something like $6 billion for transiting oil, and something like $5 billion they get for selling the gas that is being transited through Ukraine. I don't know why we are doing this, but there's still this transiting contract, which I believe will soon end. We know that the part of Russian gas has decreased from 45 to something like 18% in Europe. So our part in this is not, our share in this is not very important, very weighty, and Europe can do without Russian gas, while we can supply something like 5 billion cubic meters to Europe of Ukrainian gas. However, there are ideas voiced now. Let's transport Azerbaijani gas, and President Aliyev has said that the government of Ukraine and some European countries as well have addressed him with this idea. This was very interesting to hear. However, we don't know whether the Ukrainian government have really addressed the Azerbaijani government. We had no information about this. Moreover, we know that our President Zelensky said that some talks are going on about gas, but let me remind you that Azerbaijan is only exporting to Europe 13 billion cubic meters. They do not have any additional gas to substitute for the 14 billion cubic meters of Russian gas that is being transported through Ukraine. They have, for this, they have to actually double the volume of their gas. So we see that if they will really supply gas through Ukraine, there will be the commercial trap, which will mean that this is going to be Russian gas from Urengoy, but it will be bought or otherwise acquired by Azerbaijan and then sent through Ukraine to Europe. The question is, why shall we do it? Why shall we allow Russians to earn another $5 billion every year? It's hard for me to find the answer. Let me list some arguments that I have and try to repel them. The first thing that I see in our media is that our system is not prepared to transport gas without the Russian gas, otherwise the pressure will fall. Let me remind you that we've been preparing to live without Russian gas since 2020. I work in the system of Ukrainian transit gas for almost 10 years. I personally was involved in different negotiations. From 2014, I was a signatory to one of the interoperational agreements or contracts between Ukraine and Russia in this sphere, so I know this all personally from my own experience. So our system was preparing to work without transport since 2015, because Gazprom at that time was planning to finish the construction of Nord Stream 2 and live without Ukrainian facilities. However, the Americans have launched their sanctions. The Russians were not able to complete the construction, and the Russians were made to continue to extend the contract with Ukraine. That's why we in Ukrtransgaz at the time were working on Ukraine's ability to live, capability to live without Russian gas, without Russian transit, without any pressure coming from Russia, because we have substations which provide for the necessary technical requirements. Then some media say that without Russian transit, the Ukrainian gas transporting system will become scrap metal. I must remind you that at the moment we only transit something like 10% of what we used to transport. Its capacity is for 140 billion cubic meters. At the moment we are transporting 14 billion cubic meters, so we have actually lost almost the entire volume of the Russian transport of the Russian gas, and the system still works. It just works in another regime. Besides, we have 20 billion cubic meters of gas that we extract, and we can put them through the gas transported system. So the system will work. There is no risk that our system will stand still. Yes, it has to be modernized. We have to remove some unnecessary capacities that there are. Yes, we have to do this, and we started to do this back in 2020 and 2021. However, we have to continue this work. What other arguments are there? What I have read in the media, that Naftogaz, Ukrainian company, said that we have to retain the strategic role of our oil and gas transporting system. Is our strategic role in transporting the Russian gas? I don't think so. Our strategic role has to be in offering our strategic storages for Europeans, to Europeans. They do not have such unique gas storages underground. We have the biggest ones in Europe. Then we are already transporting gas from European countries to other European countries, like from Poland we can transport gas to Hungary or Romania, or from Hungary back to Poland. And this is our strategic role. We don't have to link transit of Russian gas to any strategic role. We know that Europe has plans to do away with Russian gas by 2027, so we don't have to exist as a transporter of Russian gas. We have to look for other opportunities. As far as the argument about what we are being told, that Russians won't hit our gas transporting system until they transport the Russian gas through it, let's think like what is the interest has to be in Russia to not to attack our gas transporting system if they have real Azerbaijani gas in it. You see, Azerbaijan is a competitor with Russian Federation in this sphere, and the only option when they do not attack our gas transporting system is when it is filled or it is carrying Russian gas. So they won't do this even if this gas is formally coming from Azerbaijan. However, if everyone understands that this is going to be the Russian gas, why should we make it more complicated? Why do we have to involve Azerbaijanis in it? I mean, let the Ministry for Energy tell us openly, dear Ukrainians, we have decided to extend the transit of Russian gas because the Russians said they officially said that they won't attack our gas transporting system until there's Russian gas in this. But we understand that Russians won't join in such an agreement. We know that they actually spend immense money to destroy our gas transporting system. They have spent almost $15 billion to destroy our electricity generation, and they have attacked at least 6 times our storages in our western regions. So the aim of the Russians is not to continue to extend the transit because it requires a lot of money from them. Their goal is to destroy our gas transporting system so that we, as Ukrainians, are more lenient and more yielding to them and will be more prepared to sign some agreement with them. So if there is no official agreement about transit, like Ukraine agrees to transport Russian oil and gas, however, and they in return give us back the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, however, this has to be a public discussion. These have to be understandable stances. If they are now suggesting that we transport Azerbaijani gas without any guarantees, and everyone understands that this is not actually Azerbaijan gas, but Russian gas, I think that this only gives Russians an opportunity to earn another $5 billion every year. And they will use this money to buy microchips installed in their weaponry systems like Kalibr and Shahed. And another argument that I came across in the media, the last argument is that if the Russians will attack our gas transporting system, then there will be no gas available in our cities. So I must tell you that we already have damages to our gas transporting system since 2022. They are different at scale, and yes, we didn't have such large-scale attacks as they launched against our electricity generating system. That's not because they spare our gas transporting system. It's because they lack enough missiles to attack all the systems of our energy delivery. We see that they stock weapons for sometimes, stock missiles, and then they attack something very critical for us, be it military objects or energy infrastructure or other objects. If they had an opportunity to attack all the objects, they would hit the gas transporting system as well. But I still remind you that there were at least 6 waves of attacks against our storages, gas storages in our western regions. They are attacking so that we cannot stock enough gas for winter. Will the transit save us? No, because the gas transit pipe is not linked, for instance, to gas supply in Kiev. Look at my Facebook and you will see that Kiev is being supplied by entirely different pipes from different directions. Odessa is 5 100 kilometers away from the transit pipeline. It's a totally different system. Besides, you can supply Odessa from Moldova, for instance. Lviv is also very far away from the gas transporting system. So I call it all fable when they say that there's just one pipeline which both transports gas and supplies Kyiv, Lviv, or other big cities. You can find this in different sources. The transit pipeline is just one pipeline among dozens of other pipelines. And of course, this is not a secret that it is Urengoy, Pomory, Uzhgorod, and then to Slovakia. I personally, as an expert in gas transporting system, I do not see any sense to extend this transit because, first of all, Russians are still earning $5 billion a year for this. Secondly, it does not guarantee that our system is not attacked. And if the system is attacked, I tell you, our system was constructed in order to work even under the conditions of the nuclear war, because it was constructed during Soviet times. This is a very resilient system. It has reserves for work. We have splendid experts, teams who can maintain this system in a working condition. So this deal with Azerbaijani Gas does not have any sense. Thank you very much. But there is still one argument, and I want either to disprove it or not. A week ago, European Pravda, Europejska Pravda, has mentioned some sources in Ukraine's government said that if Hungary or Slovakia will address us with the request to transport Azerbaijani gas, we won't have any grounds to refuse. No, I do not share this view. First of all, I must tell you, if the source is reliable, they have to name their name and surname and their position, let's say the Minister of Energy or whatever. Maybe this is just a security guard at the Ministry of Energy. Secondly, last week, the President of the European Commission was in Ukraine, and also the Commissioner for Energy. You can read this in the press. And they said that Euro Commission will not pressure Ukraine in any way in order to get transit gas. They also said that they understand that there's no free Azerbaijan gas. And so the third thing they said is that they do not see any sense in continuing to transport Russian gas because by 2027 Europe plans to discard the use of Russian gas altogether. I seem to remember that some people quote Article 276 of the Association Agreement, which says that if there's a commercial argument between some countries, they cannot use the decrease of energy transit as a tool of pressure. So if the two companies are at loggerheads, they should not use the decrease in supply as a leverage. We know that Russians used to do this if they wanted to reach any of their goal, they would stop delivery of gas to Europe or to Ukraine. Same thing is with Belarus. But I would remind those experts that there's also Article 472 of the Association Agreement, which says that this agreement association does not limit a country in using any measures in order to provide for its own security, including the conditions of war. So if we prove that the continuation of this extension of this transit is fraught with a threat to our national security, and it is, then we have the right to use our own steps. So the word goes to Viktoriia Voitsitska. Do you share these messages and how this can guarantee or not guarantee our security? Thank you for the opportunity to express my own view. First of all, I would like to thank Serhii for his very qualified analysis, very highly qualified analysis. I would also like to pay attention to some myths that are being spread by the Ukrainian media. The first myth that Serhii has also mentioned is that if there is no transit of Russian gas, there's no gas in Kyiv. Can you once again, especially if you have a map, show everyone the way that the gas goes to Kyiv by, and prove that if there's no transit, there's nothing happening to gas supply in Kyiv? You know, at the moment, I will try to find this chart, this map. It's in my telephone, not on the computer. But what I wanted to say is, look, generally speaking, we do not use transit gas to supply the city of Kyiv. Okay, without the pressure that is being provided at the expense of the presence of gas in the transit pipeline, if there's no necessary pressure there, they say that if this happens, Kyiv will freeze because gas will not reach Kyiv. Of course, this is not so, because the gas that we get in Kyiv is coming either from our own east regions, Poltava, for instance, or from our storages in the west of Ukraine. These two systems, the transit system and the Kyiv supply system, are not linked to each other. I will find this photo and show to you. While you are looking for the photo, I want to comment. There's a lot of statements that without transit, Russia will hit our compressor stations, which are not protected. It's going to be very hard, then we don't have such equipment, and we will lose our gas and we will all freeze here. This is not right. But the real threat is the gas compressor stations that stand on the ways that transport gas to Kyiv, but it is not at all linked to the gas transit system. Some people have imagined that our gas transport system is one huge pipeline. In reality, there are several pipelines, several ways, and as Serhii said, they were constructed in the way that they should survive even the nuclear blow. So can you again talk about this, maybe even repeat what you have already said? We should disprove the myth about if there's no transit through the gas system, they will hit gas transit compressor stations, and then Kiev will freeze. Look, if there are damages to our gas infrastructure, I mean big damages, theoretically it is possible that we will have problems with supply of gas, but I remind you that there's the so-called Kiev gas circle or Kiev gas ring, which means that you cannot actually break the gas supply to Kiev. Second, as far as I remember, there are at least 6 and maybe 7 different pipelines that send gas to Kiev. There are some coming from the east, some coming from the west, and from the north as well. So I think that in order to stop the gas supply to Kiev, it's very, very complicated. Besides, you have some national measures, the National Action Plan, which provides for the gradual phasing out of gas supplies while still maintaining it at the sufficient level to provide for the first needs of the population of the city. Theoretically, any system may be destroyed, but I think that we have, well, first of all, we have no guarantee that Russians won't hit our gas transport system. Who has said this? Even if there's transit. Some people say, look, they do not hit our gas transportation system because there's Russian gas. But I think that at the moment Russians are trying to make us sign some peace agreements according to their plans, and this is why they are creating energy problems for us. And they may also do this in the gas sphere, because the $5 billion is not the rescue factor for them. So I don't see any logical connection between the transit and the lack of attacks against our gas transport system. I agree with you 100%. I would like to sum up that for us, the possible blows against our gas compressor stations on different pipelines, not the transit pipeline. So this is the first conclusion. The second, about compressor stations, yes, you said they were already attacked. Compressor stations on our gas deposit storages. Can you explain that gas storages are the absolutely important elements for the work of our gas system, and attacks against them are proof enough of the Russian getting ready and then even affecting those attacks? I remember that you have shown us the information from the Ministry of Defense of Russia that they have hit the targets in the gas infrastructure. So could you please explain the connection between our gas storages work and these attacks, which are the proof of Russian attacks that actually endangered the transit? Of course, our storages are a very important component of our system. They actually provide for the functioning of our system. Actually, the gas is being lifted from from the storages, and it fills the system. And previously it's been transported through Sobranivka in Lugansk region, Lugansk Oblast, and quite a lot of gas was taken by our customers in Lugansk and Donetsk Oblasts, and then we filled additionally those pipelines. This is normal. You know, you don't have anywhere absolutely dedicated pipelines for the transit, so the gas storages for us are important because they actually provide for the functioning of the entire gas system, because the disbalance between what is being transported and what is being consumed can actually rise eightfold, especially when the population uses boilers or gas kettle or whatever, especially in winter. For instance, we only extract 45 billion cubic meters of gas, while the consumption in winter rises to 90 billion. This means that we have to supply 45 billion cubic meters from storages, and that's why they are attacking our storages, so that we cannot form enough deposits for winter. However, for the time being, the storages are working because it's not very easy to destroy them. Thank you very much, Serhii, because you have given a very highly qualified explanation of the invalidity of the myths that are being created around the gas transit. However, I would like to look at it from a different angle. It's understood that when we talk about the transit of Azerbaijani gas, you know, they do not have enough experience to transport it to Europe, and it makes no sense to send the gas from Azerbaijan to Russia and then to Europe. No economic or other foundation. Of course, if this transaction happens and they sign such a contract, I think that it's going to be only on the paper. They will exchange the volumes of gas, and in fact, Russia will send their own extracted gas to the European market. I want to remind you about the very famous phrase of President Putin, that they have European economic residents. We've been asking our European partners for several years that they ban the consumption of Russian gas entirely in order to punish the aggressor and in order to deprive them of possibility to fill their budget at the expense of our partners. We've been heard, and that's why there is the decision to make Europe independent of Russian gas resources by 2027. There are, of course, technical aspects, and there were specially made official statements that Europe is prepared for not getting any transit from Ukrainian territory, including Slovakia, Hungary, Austria. There are respective structures, and there are opportunities to replace the quantities that they used to get from Russia. So the question is, why we are talking about this still? Let's take Slovakia. Well, of course, there's Fico, who declares that he's prepared to buy 20 billion cubic meters of gas, and signed the contract, and he's interested in getting such volumes, but Slovakia has the demand for only 4 billion cubic meters of gas. So what's going to happen to the rest 16 billion cubic meters of gas? And here I have the certain déjà vu about the story with Ukrenergo. Do you remember this corruption structure, the private structure where certain people have made immense amounts of money, and they exerted political influence on decisions made in Ukraine or European countries. They controlled the political establishment, so they used this huge corruption system in order to provide for the political ambitions and plans of the Kremlin that the Kremlin has, including the government in Ukraine being controlled, or the parliament, also to have an opportunity to buy European politicians. So the issue of the so-called Azerbaijani gas, which is in reality going to be Russian gas, it does smell of the repetition of this Rosenergo story, because even if Slovakia has an opportunity to import gas other than from Ukraine, who's going to benefit from those 16 billion cubic meters of gas that will go through Slovakia? Why don't I see any statement as of today from our Naftogaz, from the board of directors, which looks to be rather professional? Why the head of the board of governors of our national company does not ask the question about this, asking where is the way for transporting these additional 16 billion cubic meters of gas, because it's understood that they will eventually end up on the European market. And who has registered this private company in Slovakia? Maybe we will see some people there who are linked to the office of the president. Maybe there are some people who are linked through family relations to the Kremlin. So God forbid that this contract is signed, but why Naftogaz does not say that when they are dealing with the state-owned Azerbaijan company SOCAR, why Naftogaz does not assume the position of trader and sell this additional gas, which Slovakia does not really need, on the European market? Why don't we provide for the transparency of the entire process? I'm also interested what Mr. Fico thinks about this. He says that economic interests are ruling the world, and there's an interest in business idea to buy 20 billion cubic meters of gas, use 4 billion of them for their own purposes, and resell the rest on the European market. However, I haven't seen any statement to the effect that this should be on the entirely transparent foundation with state-owned actors. So I think that tomorrow we may wake up and see that there are companies like this Ukrenergo with private founders who are earning money on actually the Russian gas. We know what happens when such private companies are being founded. It's also about the promotion of the global Russian interests. So my first question is to the head of the Board of Governors, Supervisory Board of Naftogaz, why there is no analysis of this contract, why there is no position that there should be no intermediaries in this case, why there is no suggestion that even if we go to sign this contract, we should get the guarantees of the security and safety of the security guarantees for our gas transportation system. Why there's no suggestion that Ukraine, through a state-owned company, should realize its function as a gas trader and provide for the main thing, which is transparency of transportation and sale of this gas on the European market. In 2021, Ursula von der Leyen said that it's necessary to provide for the transparency of buying and selling this gas for the European customers. Serhii has found the map. We will maybe look at it. It is very important to provide for the existence, for the transparency of this buyer of gas and its subsequent sale on the European markets, including the possibility to control these processes. Why our authorities are silent and what they are going to do if tomorrow we'll see that all those complicated arrangements where we see allegedly Azerbaijani gas, which is in reality Russian gas, will even be increased in volume, and this will all go through a privately owned company where we'll see some surnames from the office of the president, including those people there who are, as it turns out, linked to the Kremlin. Pani Hanna, Pani Illia, as we are hard pressed on time, please, your views. How do you think the transit of Azerbaijan gas can influence our national security? Thank you very much for the network of the protection of national interests. We regard this issue as strategic and we pay great attention to this, together with the Global Studies Center of Mikhailo Gonchar, Strategy 21. They have analyzed and described the strategies of Kremlin to bring back Russian oil and gas to European markets. They are describing three options, and this is Hungarian oil, Azerbaijan gas, and then the Qatar oil, quote unquote, for Germany through Poland. So we understand that in Ukraine some people are going to earn huge money through these schemes because the lack of communication on the part of the Ukrainian government, the office of the president, and the president himself is troubling us, because we've seen over 33 years how the gas topic was corrupting and corroding Ukraine, including Firtash's contracts and Timoshenko's arrangements. So we understand very well that there are people who are going to be parts of this corruption schemes, which will help the aggressor country to get back to the European markets. When the president from the rostrum of the UN says that Russia plans attacks on Ukrainian nuclear power objects, we understand very well that the president says that Russia does not only want to freeze Ukraine, but wants to collapse our energy system altogether and undermine the entire capability of fighting, and to make us to enter the surrender talks. We still see that people from the president's environment register a company in Slovakia for possible future shady arrangements. We are not actually obliged to provide for the transit of Russian gas to some EU countries, especially to those countries that behave like Russian proxies. That's why I do agree with Mr. Makohon that we need a frank conversation with the president who will explain to the Ukrainian society what is going on. I understand that there's some state secret, but he says, listen, this is the Russian transit, which will bring $5 billion to Russia, but it will probably bring $20 billion to Ukraine. Or the occupation of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. And we will see that there's some state-minded logics in this. But if we understand, when we understand that there are corrupted people in the environment of Ukraine, of the president of Ukraine, when they actually find possibilities for their enrichment, own enrichment, we see every night the Russian missile attacks against Ukraine. And as Mr. Honchar has rightly said, for this money Russia will buy the devices that will hit and kill Ukrainians. We have always been fighting the Russian influence here, including the Russian church or the Russian social networks. And we are now worried by the presence of Russian agents, of those people who want to develop strategic corruption in our country, which is linked not only to Russia but to the EU as well. And we shall understand, we should understand that during the 11th year of the war, this is actually the axis of evil. Yeah, I understand that in Hungary and Slovakia, where they have a lot of pro-Russian movements, they are maybe sharing the backhanders and arrangements, but the Ukrainian society has the right to know what is happening really. We should not be the so-called useful idiots or the flock. We either have the right to be explained, or we understand that this all is happening because they want to extend the influence of gas strategy on the EU. As far as Slovakia, Hungary, and Austria are concerned, there are dozens of opportunities for those countries to cover their needs, even if we do not extend the contract. Well, Slovakia only has 4 billion cubic meters for their own consumption. I hear some blackmail, like if we do not extend the contract, they won't sell the money, the arms to us. Let's talk about this openly. We will be strict in defending Ukrainian interests. We do not only talk about the Russian defeat on the battlefield, we say that the Russian Hydra, the Russian dragon, should not feed the corrupt people within Ukraine. those people who are responsible for keeping Ukraine within the sphere of influence of the Russian Federation. We understand very well that the money they will earn, they will use for the undermining activities within Ukraine. Thank you very much. Serhii, Viktoriia, and Hanna, I think that you have talked about everything, but I will look at this issue from a different point of view. In 2023, Gazprom has been in the red for the first time. In 2023, the Gazprom has offered the helping hand to the Russian budget, and they have paid billions and trillions of taxes to the Russian budget, which actually saved the budget system of Russia. And the price of continuing extending the contract for transit is our helping hand to Gazprom, which is now at the brink of survival. Last year, they have received the operational income 28 billion. If we extract 6 billion that they get for exporting gas to Europe and some other expenditures, then Gazprom becomes not a company that can help Russian budget. But of course, in Russia, the perception of Gazprom is like, this is our national treasure. In other words, this company in Russia is the symbol of stability. They cannot allow for the bankruptcy of this company. But in order for this company to continue to function, they will have to provide for $10 billion from the Russian budget to support Gazprom. Otherwise, Gazprom will cease to exist. And the question is how we are, in fact, saving Gazprom during the war. If we stop the Russian transit of gas through Ukraine, they will have to extract money from the Russian budget to save Gazprom. If we continue with this, if we extend the contract, they will get the money, the Gazprom, to put money into the Russian budget. And of course, you have very rightly talked about who is going to profit from this oil and gas. Stopping the transit of gas from Russia will just topple the pro-Russian regimes in some European countries. Orban is blocking $6.5 billion that the European Union could have given us quite some time ago. Dear friends, if you have any questions, please signal. No questions. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, our armed forces, for their work, which enables our work. We will continue to work, and glory to Ukraine.